Though it's the king of the nervous system, the human brain is also extremely delicate. To work properly, it requires lots of blood, more than any other part of the body. An intricate network of blood vessels carries oxygen and other essential nutrients to the brain. During a stroke, these lifelines are cut. When blood flow stops, it takes only a few minutes for critical nerve cells or neurons to die. Unlike other cells in the body, neurons don't regenerate. Once they die, they're gone forever. This is an MRI scan of Toshko's injured brain. Most of the left side was destroyed when the blood vessels that fed that area were blocked. New imaging techniques provide a three-dimensional view and show in vivid detail the extent of damage. A stroke does more than destroy tissue. It shuts down large areas of the brain's communications networks. These networks consist of neurons that exchange information using bursts of electricity. When a blood clot destroys a neuron, it also cuts off the neuron's ability to talk to other cells. If the information lines are severed, we may lose the ability to perform important functions such as talking or walking. But the brain, as it turns out, is still resilient. Even in the face of catastrophic injury, healthy neurons can take over some of the responsibilities of damaged or dead cells. When an injured brain starts to build new networks of neurons, the process of recovery begins. To understand how the brain recovers, we need to study the behavior of its nerve cells. The brain houses roughly 100 billion nerve cells, and they reach out and connect with each other with their long, wiry fibers. By themselves, brain cells aren't too impressive, but when they hook up with each other, they become truly astonishing. Here, actual cells or neurons are building a circuit. One by one, neurons form connections with each other, creating vast chains of communication networks. The phenomenal quantity of connections, astounding in their intricacy and complexity, eventually number in the trillions. It's these connections that allow neuron-to-neuron communication, the basis of all brain activity. Neurons talk to each other in a two-step process, using electricity and chemistry. Electrical signals traveling through each cell send bursts of chemical molecules from one neuron to the next. These chemicals, called neurotransmitters, convey countless kinds of messages. The brain's neural networks extend through the rest of the nervous system in the body. This allows the body to feed the brain a constant stream of information about the surrounding environment. What the body picks up on its right side enters the left side of the brain. The left brain also controls movement of the right side. Conversely, the right side of the brain controls movement on the left side of the body. Other sections of the brain are also delegated to certain tasks. This area covers vision. This strip handles touch. This one, movement. Speech comes from the areas shown in yellow and orange. Only the left side of the brain is equipped with the neural networks for language. If a stroke damages the left side of the brain, the patient may lose the ability to speak. A stroke like this could also paralyze the right side of the body. The reason for Xunchan's miraculous recovery may lie here, in the oldest part of the brain, called the brainstem. Functioning like a main switch, the brainstem maintains all brain activity. Its axons spread throughout the entire brain. Excitation of the brainstem results in the transmission of electrical impulses which heighten brain activity. Therapists believe that repetitive exercises like crawling might stimulate the brainstem, thus improving the brain's recovery from trauma. This microscopic footage shows young neurons on the left and older ones on the right. Both of their neural branches are cut at the same time. Notice the speed with which the young ones reconnect on the left side. The young brain's ability to rewire itself quickly plays a key role in rehabilitation. When the brain suffers injury, a number of biological events unfold that allow the organ to begin repairing itself. This is a microscopic picture of damaged brain tissue. The holes are created by special cleanup cells that clear away the debris of dead tissue. This process is carried out by macrophages, shown in blue, and astrocytes, highlighted in orange. Together, these cells pave the way for restoration. Here's what happens inside the brain. These are normal neurons with electric impulses traveling through them. After suffering damage, the blue neurons on the right are destroyed. The impulses are no longer transmitted. The first to arrive on the scene are the macrophages, who consume the damaged tissue. When they finish clearing away the debris, they signal the astrocytes. The astrocytes help the cleanup by releasing vast amounts of a substance called nerve growth factor. Working like a biological fertilizer, nerve growth factor encourages neurons to sprout new branches that reach out and connect with other neurons. New lines of communication are set up to do what the damaged neurons once did. With the power lines restored, the brain regains some of its functions. Under the microscope, it's possible to see these housekeeping cells at work. These are actual macrophages, the brain's Pac-Man. When the brain is damaged, macrophages increase in number and appetite. After the cells consume the damaged tissue, fluid collects in the empty spaces left behind. The neurons can then extend their branches into these spaces to rebuild networks. They're encouraged by these astrocytes, which, upon bursting, release nerve growth factor. Under microscope, it's possible to see nerve growth factor's dramatic effects. The substance was added to the neurons on the right. Axons are growing rapidly. Restoration of brain function begins with this new growth. Some researchers speculate that nerve growth factor helps account for the flexible wiring in the brain. A site like this, neurons sprouting fibers and establishing new connections, dismantles our previous notions about the brain's static and hardwired character. Still, when the brain suffers injury, full restoration of functions depends on more than a neuron's ability to grow new connections. Research shows that sometimes when the brain is rebuilding its damaged networks, the neural wires get crossed by mistake. At this hospital in Germany, a patient is recovering from a stroke that damaged the left side of her brain, leaving her right side paralyzed. Therapy helped her regain some movement.
Viel besser. Die Sprache ist auch schon wesentlich besser geworden. Unbedingt, ja. Haben Sie noch Schmerzen?
Still, when she moves her right hand, notice that her left hand moves too. The neural wires that control movement in her right and left hands have crossed.
Vierter Finger und dritter und aufmachen und 2 und 3 und 4 und 5.
The brain can correct this too by reinforcing and strengthening newly restored circuits. To see how, we need an inside view of how neural forests grow. Here, newly formed branches of neurons reach out and connect with this neuron in an attempt to restore certain functions. Before the injury, only one particular neuron fired off its signal to this one. But in this newly formed network, the cell is getting messages from many others. No clear pathway or circuit has been set up. Consequently, the information is muddled and weak. The connecting neurons bombard the receiving neuron with neurotransmitters, chemical molecules that carry a variety of messages. What we have, understandably, is a confused network. The incoming red signals are the correct ones. Physical therapy can reinforce that particular circuit and give the network a much-needed jolt to straighten itself. Now, the receiving neuron is starting to get a stronger, clearer signal from the red circuit, while other neurons continue to send their weak signals in blue. Eventually, the red circuit replaces the other connections, and the network undergoes a bit of neural pruning. The weak connections are weeded out as the strong one grows more firmly rooted. Through the constant reinforcement that physical therapy provides, the circuit is finally restored to its proper working order. Toshko's healthy right brain has tried to compensate for the left as best it can. In this PET scan image, the white, yellow, and red colors indicate high levels of brain activity. Whereas in a normal brain, the right side is not taxed to quite the same extent. In healthy brains, the right and left sides work together to integrate words with proper intonations. The left brain produces the correct speech, and the right brain mediates the emotions attached to it.
Hi, how are you?
words produced only with the left brain will be intelligible, but will sound flat or indifferent.
Hi, how are you?
Conversely, if only the right brain is involved, then the language will sound like gibberish, although the emotions accompanying them might be recognizable.
Wow, right?
Even though the sounds produced by the right brain aren't normal speech, they are filled with intent. The TTT sound that Toshiko makes means something. Kentaro needs to figure out what. In this case, she wants a potato chip. Now, researchers think the answer might lie in the brainstem. The brainstem is our life support system. It controls heart rate and breathing. But within the brainstem sits a pea-sized area called the locus coeruleus. The locus coeruleus consists of a tight bundle of neurons. About 30,000 of them cluster in this tiny space. The influence of those neurons extends throughout the brain as their long fibers build looping pathways of communication. These neural streams interact with the areas of the brain that control motivation and attention. And when excited, the neurons of the locus coeruleus use their extended fibers to pump a chemical substance called noradrenaline into the neural system. The noradrenaline prompts the yellow astrocyte to release nerve growth factor and other similar chemicals that encourage regeneration. We can see noradrenaline's dramatic effects using this experiment. This rat is missing areas of his right brain. As a result, the left side of his body is paralyzed. The rat is unable to cross the wooden walkway. It then receives an injection of a drug that stimulates the release of noradrenaline. Three hours later, the paralysis disappears. Under a microscope, we can see noradrenaline strengthening neural activity. Here are neurons in a cat that normally respond to vision. When noradrenaline is added, the number of responding neurons rises dramatically. The results suggest that neural networks are somehow fortified or extended by noradrenaline. A picture of willpower and its effects on recovery might then look something like this: a stimulated brainstem that channels streams of noradrenaline throughout the brain, activating the cells responsible for restoration. A patient's environment can deeply affect motivation. Victims of traumatic brain injury often show a powerful need to return to their familiar world, to regain pieces of a lost past. In his diaries, Kentaro wrote of revisiting favorite places with his wife. Today will be a simple outing to the supermarket. But to his wife, Kentaro recalls shopping was always great fun. This is the store where Toshiko shopped before her stroke. Traveling the aisles and scanning the items on display, Toshiko appears remarkably attentive and stimulated.
おばちゃんにお金やって入って入ってね。
どうもありがとうございます。
でこう押さえてるの。はい。
あ、そうですか。
はい、これ持って。はい、この中に入れて、この中に。ね。でみんなこれをいっぱい全部持つの、これ。あれだろう。おばちゃんお釣り。取る？お父さん持つよ。いっぱい溜まったな。
Is a normalizing activity, one that anchors her more firmly to the life she once
お
had.
金払って、はい。193円はやります。
The experience seems to leave a strong impression on her.
ありがとうございました。
ほら。さて今度はどちらに行きますか？
As Toshiko's story illustrates, the brain can continue to recover from traumatic injury for as long as 10 years. Each case is different, depending on motivation, therapy, and normalizing activities. But the miracles that we hope for are still decades away. When they arrive, they may look like this. Researchers in Chicago are working on a brain coolant that could be injected into the carotid artery minutes after someone suffers a stroke or traumatic head injury. Starved for oxygen and blood, neurons only survive for about 2 minutes or less. When the neurons die, the damage is done. But clinical trials have proven that cooling the brain enables the cells to live for an hour or more. Scientists are also developing a brain-cooling helmet. In the hands of paramedics, this kind of equipment could someday buy victims of brain injury the crucial time they need for treatment and make the difference between tragedy and triumph. Until that time, patients like Toshiko must depend on the rehabilitation process, where success comes slower, but is perhaps more